Hello everybody, Tyler King here with a new episode of New Review. Today, I'm finally taking a crack at reviewing. It's going to be a pain in the butt to get on out of here. The brand new David Bowie box set, Brilliant Adventure, 1992 to 2001. So this is the fifth in a series that Bowie's estate has been putting out. Each one focuses on a different phase of his career, and this one focuses on his output from 1992 to 2001. I've seen some videos of people doing like unboxings of it and then just giving sort of like vague overviews of what all is included in the box set, and I wanted to do more of like a quick review of each individual album and each individual component that it comes with. And so the very first record in this box set is Black Tie, White Noise. And I gotta be honest with you guys, this was an album that I was not very warm on really up through the release of this album. It's his second one with Nile Rodgers, who also produced Let's Dance. And this really is, it's a very relaxed, comforting sort of Bowie album. There's a ton of jazz influence on here. He has the saxophonist Lester Bowie, no relation, playing saxophone all over this thing, culminating in one of the most self-referential songs of Bowie's entire career, Looking for Lester, ha ha ha. It is... I would not call it an essential Bowie album because I don't think that there are enough like great songs on it to warrant that. But like You've Been Around is great. Black Tie, White Noise is pretty good. Jump They Say is great. Night Flights, Palace Athena, Don't Let Me Down and Down. There is a lot of good stuff on this album, and I would recommend it, but not necessarily as a starting point in your Bowie journey. Up next is the soundtrack for the Buddha of Suburbia. So this, it says it's the soundtrack for the Buddha of Suburbia, but really only a couple of songs on here were used in that mini-series. And this is essentially just Bowie and I'm going to horribly mispronounce his name, so apologize. Bowie and Erdal Kazilse. They recorded these songs in about a week, and it has some of the best material of his from the decade. The title track is pretty good. There are two versions on here. One with Erdal playing guitar, and then the second one with Lenny Kravitz on guitar. Sex in the Church, The Mysteries is such a sprawling ambient number that really reminds me of stuff from the second half of his Low album. Bleed Like a Crazed Dad, Dead Against It is really fun. Strangers When We Meet is probably my favorite song on here. It's just an absolutely gut-wrenching, heartbreaking song. It's always been a favorite of mine for sure. And I would say that Buddha of Suburbia really is the most underrated or possibly underappreciated album in Bowie's entire discography, because... And he started this on Black Tie, White Noise, but on Buddha of Suburbia, it really feels like it's just him making whatever it is that he wants to make, with no sort of like song structure restrictions or genre tropes that he has to play into. Because one of the things that this box set comes with is a hardcover book that includes things like promotional photos, handwritten notes by Bowie, and then each album has liner notes written by its respective producer. And Nile Rodgers says like a few times how much he wanted Black Tie White Noise to be a hit and to do better than Let's Dance. And it felt like him and Bowie really butted heads on that. But with Boot of Suburbia, it just really feels like Bowie doing what he wanted to do. And that leads us into the next album in this set, which is Outside. Holy shit. This and the next album were the ones I was most looking forward to with this set. Dear God, Outside is just such a landmark album for me in terms of Bowie and really his entire output. It's such a dense album. It's a long album. It's the longest one in his entire discography. It's a bit inaccessible at times. It's a bit industrial at times, but there's always this like sort of unease to it. The song Wishful Beginnings really, really amps up that uncomfortability factor. So does stuff like The Voyeur of Utter Destruction is Beauty and A Small Plot of Land. The Motel and Outside, the title track, are both a bit more atmospheric. It's just, I mean, like, I'm just looking at the track list. I'm like, every single song here is phenomenal. Outside to me really is where Bowie, like, finally regains his full footing and releases, I mean, like, his just, it is hard for me to put into words how much I enjoy the Outside album. But I do not enjoy it as much as the next one in the box set, which is Earthling. Which is one of the only albums that comes in a gatefold packaging. However, both records are just in this side of the gatefold, which is a little weird. But Earthling, to me, is easily top 5 David Bowie albums for me. Every single song except possibly the title track is just like so timeless in my head, and it's described a lot as like Bowie's quote-unquote drum and bass album, and I get where people come from if they don't necessarily listen to drum and bass. For me, I would describe it more as maybe like Bowie's industrial rock album. You can definitely tell his inspiration from acts such as Nine Inch Nails, The Prodigy. There's a bit of influence from people like Tricky in there. Just every single song though is like him and Reeves Gabrels and Mark Platty made the bulk of this album together, and they just absolutely knocked it out of the park. Telling Lies, I'm Afraid of Americans, 7 Years in Tibet, Dead Man Walking, The Last Thing You Should Do. Just such a nearly perfect album in a discography that has more than a few perfect albums. Earthling. And now, each box set, whether it's something like a Depeche Mode singles collection or a career retrospective or anything like that, is always going to have one album that's not as good as the others. And for me, that is the next one in the set, Hours, which is the other gatefold in this set. Easily one of my least favorite David Bowie albums. The adventurousness of the last 3 or 4 albums is completely gone and really neutered. I think that you can tell straight away what kind of album this is going to be with the song Thursday's Child, with those very grating background vocals. I feel like it's Bowie trying to maybe make another sort of hunky-dory sort of album, just with really, shiny and crisp 90s production. It does absolutely nothing for me. It's the only album from this decade where there is not a single song on it that I would call great. 7 is good, Survive is good, The Pretty Things Are Going to Hell is good, and I do like The Dreamers. But otherwise, it's absolutely bland and forgettable, and for me, that's a bigger sin than if it were bad. Anyways, moving on, we then have a live album. David Bowie, BBC Radio Theatre, London, June 27, 2000. This is either just a few days before or just a few days after playing Glastonbury that year. And, you know, a lot of my criticisms of the Hours album also apply here. It's very stale arrangements. Like, I love the album Low, especially the song Always Crashing in the Same Car. And this is the exact same rendition that was on the 2 1999 live albums from the Brilliant Live Adventures box set with those just grating backing vocals. And it's a shame because if you look at the track listing, you must think like, wow, this is a great performance. Wild as the Wind, Ashes to Ashes, The Man Who Sold the World, Stay, Cracked Actor, I'm Afraid of Americans, Starman, Heroes, Let's Dance. And then there are deeper cuts on here, of course. The London Boys, I Dig Everything, Little Wonder, Halo Space Boy. But it just feels like no one is particularly invested in this performance. And really it just comes across as being very bland, very stale, which is something that I levy as a criticism against really this whole like couple of years of Bowie's live performances, which is just insane because not you know like 3 years ago he was putting on some of the best, most adventurous performances of his entire career, and this really feels like an instance where he was trying too hard a bit to be like quote unquote radio friendly, especially following some of the more abrasive stuff on Outside and Earthling. And on that note, I do have to say the songs on here from those albums, which are Little Wonder, Halo Space Boy, and I'm Afraid of Americans, nobody after Reeves Gabrels in Bowie's live band could play his parts. It's just a fact. Especially when you get somebody like Earl Slick on lead guitar here, who is kind of like as like quote unquote rock and roll as they come. You know, Reeves comes from a jazz background and has a bit more of like an improvisational element to his playing. And you just do not feel that on any of the songs on this live album from the work that he did with Bowie. And yeah, I would say that and Hours are the two most disappointing albums in this collection. Now on to what the big draw was for a lot of people, and that is Toy. Toy being a scrapped David Bowie studio album from 2001 where him and his band recorded new interpretations of some of his oldest material. There's been a bootleg version of this album going around the internet for a few years at this point, but it is good to finally have a like official release of this. Is it a lost masterpiece of an album? I wouldn't say so. But what it is just a sort of like spur of the moment, very fun collection of songs. And you can tell that the band is having a really good time with this material. You can tell that Bowie is in really good spirits with this material as well. Some of these songs, like Can't Help Thinking About Me and The London Boys, had showed up on his set lists over the last couple of years. And, I mean, kind of like what I was saying with Black Tie White Noise, is that, yes, it's an album I would recommend, but not as an entry point to David Bowie. Really, like, the big song on here for me is Shadow Man. It is just so atmospheric, and Bowie's vocal delivery is just, like, second to none. Yeah, overall, I think it's a good release. I'm glad that we finally have it. I am excited for the toy box set to show up. But that is Toy, which is the last quote-unquote traditional album in this box set, because what we have left is Recall 5. And so what this is, each of these Bowie retrospective box sets have had a collection of, like, B-sides, non-album singles, things like that. And so this is that. And this is 4 discs. And I do have to say, I'm a bit frustrated that about half of it is taken up by material from the Hours album and sessions. If you're going to have 2 versions of Thursday's Child and, various, versions of other songs from the Hours album, why then not have, like, all of the I'm Afraid of Americans remixes that Trent Reznor did, or some of the various Halo Space Boy remixes that were done, or the Heart's Filthy Lesson. I do appreciate a lot of the songs on here that are B-sides, like the Ice Storm version of I Can't Read, Lucy Can't Dance from Black Tie White Noise, Real Cool World, We Shall Go to Town from the Hours sessions, which was a B-side to one of the singles, is one of the better songs on here. The Stigmata soundtrack version of Pretty Things Are Going to Hell I enjoy a lot, and I also enjoy the different language versions of some of the songs. So, for instance, he has an Indonesian vocal version of Don't Let Me Down and Down, and a Mandarin language version of 7 Years in Tibet. But overall, just like the last disc especially is just really grating for me, but that's because just Hours to me is not an album really that I'm going to find myself coming back to. I think that as far as all of the material on here, Hours is probably going to be the one that I come back to the least amount of times. And then finally, we have the hardcover book here, which, like I said, has some press photos as well as liner notes and things like that. So here are Bowie's handwritten notes explaining the concept behind the Outside album. And it really is a great insight to the recording of some of these albums, particularly Reeves Gabrel's and Mark Platty's notes on Earthling, which, like I've said, is an album that I already love dearly, but their notes on it really help to put certain songs in a different perspective. And now comes the big question. Is this worth getting? And if it is, who should be getting it? Admittedly, this is the only of his career retrospective box sets that I've gotten so far. All the other ones, as they were coming out, didn't particularly interest me because I can find those albums, for the most part, separately for not a ridiculous amount, whether it be a newer reissue or an original pressing. But with this one's really different because they're all very hard to find on vinyl. Again, whether it's an original pressing or even a repress from the earlier mid 2010s. I know that there were some done for Outside and Earthling that now go for like $150, $175. Um, so I think that if you're a Bowie completist and you enjoy these albums and you don't have them yet on your shelf, I think that as far as a price point goes, this is currently the best way to get all of them. You're also getting remastered versions of these albums. I know, for instance, that the original vinyl pressing of Outside was just called Selections from Outside, and it cut some songs off the track listing and included edited versions of others. So this really is the first time that that album fully is being pressed on vinyl. You do also get the Toy album, which I'm sure will probably come out as its own standalone release eventually. You do get the live album, you do get the B-side and remix and single version collection. However, I do completely understand the issue with the price point. This is a very expensive box set. Now, like I said, when you are looking at the amount of music that's on it, this is something like 17 or 18 discs. And the price of the original pressings of some of these albums, yes, this is technically a cost-effective way of getting all of them. However, if you're patient, all of the already released albums will be made available separately soon. I would say the announcement will probably be no later than end of February or early March. Because with each of the box sets that have come out, very shortly after that, those individual albums are released individually, not counting whatever the specific live album or single compilation is inside of those box sets. So if you're patient, you can get Black Tie White Noise, Voodoo Suburbia, Outside, Earthling, and Hours all separately. And I would guess that they'll probably all be no more than maybe $35 each. Because they're all double albums except for Hours. So, doing rough math, you could get all of them for around $170-ish, which is just over about half of what this box set is currently going for. So, again, I totally understand the frustration that is levied at the price of this box set. Also, what it doesn't include, I can see as being a detractor for some people. Some people are still waiting on the original version of Outside, the Leon suites, and also kind of like what I was saying, which is that if you're going to include some of these B-sides, some of these remixes, why not just include all of them? Understandably, that would make Recall 5 something like a 6 LP set, but for the price, I think that you could have maybe thrown a couple more discs in there for us. That being said, though, I do recommend this box set. I, again, don't necessarily think that's for everybody, especially if you're more of like an entry Bowie fan or more of like a quote-unquote casual Bowie fan. Unfortunately, this is an era of his music that gets overlooked almost across the board, with really only I'm Afraid of Americans being included in like the Best of Bowie CD that had come out, I think in like the early 2000s, or being included on stuff like the single or double vinyl version of the Nothing Has Changed album, which really is a shame because to me, I would say, next to his output from maybe like 76 through 80, this to me is his best period of music. It really shows him rediscovering, quote unquote, like his way and making music that's exciting again. And I really do hope that one of the things that comes out of this box set is sort of like a critical reevaluation of his 90s material, um, which I think would just be the best compliment that could be paid to these albums from this box set being released. So yes, I would recommend getting this, unless you just want to get maybe one or two albums, in which case probably pick them up in a couple of months. But I mean, this is just I think that this is up there. I don't have a lot of box sets, mind you, so I would say this is up there with like the Godzilla box set that that Waxwork put out last year. I'd say this is also up there with the Songs of Faith and Devotion singles box set that Depeche Mode put out a couple of years ago. It's just absolutely stunning. It is pretty much flawless. And I definitely see myself coming back to a lot of the material in this box set over and over and over again. And that is Brilliant Adventure by David Bowie. What do you think? Do you think that this is the worst of the career box sets that have come out? Do you think this is the best? Do you hate his 90s material? Do you love his 90s material? I would love to read your thoughts in the comment below. And just as a reminder, if you do want to get access to videos like this a little bit early, please consider subscribing to my Patreon. I'll have a link to that in the description box below. I'm Tyler King with New Review. Keep listening to great music, and I will see you next time.